Ready for the next announce?
They haven't finished striking him yet.
Cameras on the doorway.
Hold on.
It is now my pleasure to introduce Mr. Ben Mead, President of the North America Ingathering of Holocaust Survivors.
I will now light a candle of Havdalah, not the Havdalah of ending the Shabbat, but of Havdalah of ending the days of remembrance. Please be seated. We here in New York experience today a historic day. For the first time in the history of New York, the President of the United States came for a Yom HaShoah, for an observance. In that room where the President spoke, no applause were allowed. So therefore, we will triple the applause today. Mr. President, Mr. Bronfman, distinguished guests, and dear people. Past week, hundreds of thousands of people all over the country, in cities and towns, paid tribute to the 6 million Jewish martyrs who perished in the Holocaust. At the same time, the eyes and the hearts of everyone in America were turned to the gruesome tragedy which took place in Oklahoma City, the worst act of terrorism in this nation's history. The dead, the wounded, and especially the children will be seared in our memory for a long time. Terrorism, killing, devastation is constantly in the air. For us survivors, an echo of a darker, unique time, the Holocaust. We survivors don't know the graves of our loved ones. Their remains, their ashes are spread all over Europe. We don't know their graves, but they still live in our minds. They are in our thoughts, in our sleepless nights, in our pained hearts. In the flicker of this lighted candle, I see again my city of birth, the Warsaw Ghetto, my house, my people. I see them on their last march to the deportation point, to the trains. I see the faces of the young who took up arms against the monstrous German murders. I see the flame of the burning Jewish houses and the flames of the crematoria which engulfed the world. Where my cradle stood, where I was born, where my family lived there for 300 years. Let me say that this candle shall illuminate the life of our people, their suffering and their hopes, in a world which then abandoned them. The light is not extinguished. It is still with us, and shall be warm and light the way of all the people toward a secure, peaceful life for the future of generations, for the future of this country, for the future of the state of Israel, and all the people in the world. Thank you.
And now, Rabbi Israel Singer, the Secretary General of the World Jewish Congress, will offer our invocation.
Lo al alechem levado yichyeh ha'adam. Not by bread alone does man live. The word lechem has two other meanings in Jewish tradition using the same letters. Bread, lechem, cholem, visionary, dreamer, and lochem, fighter, struggler. Not by bread alone does man succeed, but by struggling and fighting and by dreaming. Tonight, we have come to pay tribute to Edgar M. Bronfman, who promised 15 years ago when he became president that every man in every community throughout the world, when he or she sits down at their table, will be as comfortable as he is, will feel as comfortable as he does. This bread is the bread of a visionary, the bread of a fighter. That bread which supported the struggle for peace of Mr. Peres, and the bread which continues to support the struggle that Mr. President, you and our great nation shall continue to lead this world through a maze of terrorism and darkness. Edgar, you have changed the world, and you will continue to do so, not by bread alone. And Jan, stand by his side and give him the strength to do so. Thank you very much. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, please welcome one of tonight's dinner chairmen, Edgar Bronfman, Jr.
Good evening, Mr. President, Minister Peres, and all of our family and friends and business associates who have joined us here today to pay tribute to a remarkable man. It is a pleasure and a privilege to share this special evening with you. My father, Edgar M. Bronfman, is both a business leader and a diplomat in the service of the Jewish people. He has integrated both of those roles into an extraordinary record of achievement. He has built Seagram into one of the world's leading international companies, and his vision for that company has been sound and astute. He is a man who likes to win, and invariably does so. And Seagram is a living testament to his talent. As a diplomat generally and as president of the World Jewish Congress specifically, for the last 15 years now, he is an arbiter and a voice for the disenfranchised peoples of the world. And had you asked me, or any of my siblings, or many of his friends 15 years ago, if Dad would have had the patience, the tenacity, the willingness to compromise that this role demands, we would have said no. We would have been wrong. He is patient when he needs to be, impatient when he needs to be, tenacious always, and flexible when appropriate. But his exceptional record is informed more by his compassion and his intellect. Dad is a man who believes in justice and fairness. He is totally unafraid. And the people for whom he has fought in all four corners of the world are those who can best attest to his skill, his determination, and his passion for what he believes to be right. He cares about other people, and he has made that caring palpable in so many ways, in so many places, for so many people. Robert F. Kennedy used to paraphrase George Bernard Shaw when he said, "Some see the world as it is and ask why. I see the world as it might be and ask why not." No ideology better describes Dad than that. He has always reached higher and farther and faster and carried so many of us in his wake. Tonight, Dad, I am thrilled to be a part of the celebration of your career so far and to say how much I love you, how proud I am to be your son, and how happy I am that President Clinton, Foreign Minister Perez, your family, and your friends are here to honor the extraordinary life you have led. To everyone here, and especially to Dad, welcome and enjoy the evening.
Mr. President, Mr. Foreign Minister, my beloved brother, family, friends, I am so delighted to join with my nephew in welcoming all to this very, very special evening. And I now have a very special task. I want to discuss for a few minutes a man who is a visionary, a patriot, a Nobel Peace Prize laureate, which is a quick but apt description of Shimon Peres. He was born in Poland, but moved to what is now Israel in the mid-1930s. Since he joined with his family to live in Israel, Shimon Peres has given his life to Israel and to the Jewish people. As a very young man, in his early 20s, he became head of his country's defense ministry mission to the United States, and at the tender age of 29, became Director General of Israel's Ministry of Defense. It was he who gave birth to and nurtured Israel Aircraft Industries, and who saw to it that Israel's defense needs in their entirety could be manufactured at home. For how indeed can a man dream of peace unless he is sure in his heart that his nation can defend itself to the fullest extent? Mr. Peres was first elected to the Israeli Knesset in 1959. He has held every senior post possible in government, including the offices of Prime Minister, Defense Minister, Finance Minister, and today, Foreign Minister. He is both a prolific reader and an accomplished author. It is my profound pleasure to introduce to this wonderful audience my dear friend, a visionary, patriot, and Nobel Peace Prize laureate, the Honorable Shimon Peres.
Thank you, Charles. Mr. President, may I mention a person who is not necessarily a member of the Bronfman family, but almost. I was so glad to see here Mr. Mulroney, the former Prime Minister of Canada. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, friends, I think all of us are moved by seeing the President of the United States being with us for a second time today, once saluting a painful memory, then saluting a promising family. In the Bronfman family, they have had a code of their own, which was called L&L, meaning lessons from life. And Edgar, when he was still young, and somebody was arguing with him, how can you capitalize on a success? Edgar said, it is the brand, not the age. Edgar, it's the brand, not the age, that we are celebrating tonight. And don't you think that the Bronfman brand is an easy matter? Actually, I started my relations with the first generation of the Bronfman, Sam Bronfman, the father of the family, the founder of the family, and Sadie, a young lady which is now 98 years old, and the children never knew what to follow, the power will of the father and the unbelievable charm of the mother. They took both. Sam Bronfman himself, while becoming rich and powerful, never stopped being Jewish or being a Zionist. He devoted his whole life for it. Mr. President, the person that Sam Bronfman admired mostly was a man by the name of Nahum Goldman, was the president of the Jewish Congress. It so happened that he was born in the same small town that I was born. This is the Yiddish hope of our life. Small like hope and great like hope. Small like hope in number, great like hope in horizon. And I'm not sure that Sam ever believed that his elder son will succeed Nahum Goldman as the president of Jewish life. I was reluctant to mention it, but truth is truth. Edgar is already a president for 15 years and is still running. Unbelievable. But he didn't waste his 15 years. He really attained some outstanding achievement for all of us. When the Soviet Union was still closed, he went there and knocked on the door and raised his voice without any hesitation, with the pride, the conviction of a Bronfman boy. He played a major role in opening the gates of the Soviet Union to the Jewish people. You know, maybe the greatest thing that happened to us was to have close to 600,000 Jewish people who came from the Soviet Union to Israel over the last 4 years. And what a wonderful immigration. You know, the greatest contradiction in Soviet life was the unbelievable conflict or contradiction between the intelligence of the people and the lack of intelligence of the system. Never did such an unintelligent system produce so many intelligent people. So, among the 600,000 people we got, we have 15,000 physicians. In addition to the 12,000 we have had in Israel, they doubled the number, and we cannot be sick twice. We are trying to look for a compensation. We have had 25,000 engineers in Israel. We got additional 50,000 engineers. The more we lose miles, the more we gain brains per mile in our country. And then, among them, 10,000 musicians. Israel is full of music. Every village has a philharmonic orchestra. The only thing we lack is an audience. Hopefully we shall get them as well. And then Edgar went to the Vatican and prepared the ground for the understanding between the world of Catholics and the Jewish life. I assure you, it is not a simple proposition, because it happens once in 1,994 years, and it happened now. And then Edgar would never let the Germans escape their responsibility. I'm looking at President Clinton. I don't envy him. You know, after all, he's the first president in the last 75 years that has lost the traditional enemy of the United States of America. How lucky were the former presidents. They have had an enemy. They know where the enemy is, what is his strengths, what is the danger, and the Congress on both sides say, against this enemy, you want money, have it. You want soldiers, have it. You want support, has it. One day, the enemy disappeared. What a catastrophe. How can you run a foreign policy if you don't have an enemy? but the United States and its president lost an enemy, but they have discovered dangers which are greater than the enemies that we knew. They are not necessarily national or territorial or material, but they are terrible and powerful and dangerous. They are universal and global. And furthermore, we are not trained to see them, to appreciate their strengths, their dangers, their potential. From a daily experience of having the air we breathe polluted, to see our children falling in the trap of drugs, and seeing a new force which we cannot measure or understand overshadowing our skies, the fundamentalist. I think President Clinton is the first president that has to set a new agenda in our life. And ladies and gentlemen, let's be honest. All of us prefer to remember rather than to think. It is nice to remember. You know the nest that you were born in. You know where to hide, where to stand, where to run away. But when you enter the chambers of a new age, you are worried, you are confused, you are skeptical. And I do believe that President Clinton has to and will set a new agenda. Fundamentalism, though it claims of being religious, is not necessarily religious, not necessarily Muslim. I think they hang on religion as an excuse, but when it comes to real life, they are totally anti-religion. I want to say one word about the Muslims, the Christians, and the Jews. None of us permits a woman or a man to commit suicide. Life is sacred. Whereas communism didn't have much respect for the Lord in heaven, fundamentalism does not have much respect for the human being on earth. They are killers of their own children, of innocent children. They made terror a weapon, suicide a tactic. You know, we feel all of a sudden religiously united. When we were following in Israel what happened in Oklahoma, and we felt how you, ladies and gentlemen, all of a sudden felt like the same family, at loss at the brutality of these tactics. We were with you. You were together, and we were together with you. We want to bring an end to it. I know that the President is determined to run the new challenge. We enjoyed a great friendship of the United States of America. Both parties, the Congress, the administration. We feel lucky to have President Clinton as our friend, a moving friend. And together we are trying to bring peace to the Middle East. The Middle East is on a move. May I say that every great political decision has a contradiction in it. And I don't say that peace does not have a contradiction. It does. But the choice is clear. We want to make peace with our neighbors. We want to enable the whole people in the Middle East to enhance their standard of living. We think that fundamentalism is not only an enemy of Israel, but an enemy of the Arabs as well. We made peace with Egypt. We made peace with Jordan. I was never a great monarchist, but when it comes to Jordan, I'm having a second thought about the throne. There is something in it that possesses charm and promise. It's a very successful peace. We are trying to find a solution with the Palestinians. Let me say one word, because I know it's very much on your mind. People say, can you trust them? It's not simple. I'm sure there are many Palestinians who ask, can you trust us? And Arafat told me already, he says, democracy, who has invented it? It is so tiring. There is something to it. It is tiring. Peace is tiring too. But we see Palestinians who are today citizens of Israel. We live with them as friends and neighbors. We see Palestinians in Jordan. We don't have much complaint. Arafat too divorced terror. He didn't become a perfect politician, but did you ever met a perfect politician? All of us have our shortcomings. There is still the Hamas and the Jihad terrorizing and fighting. Ladies and gentlemen, we shall overcome them. We shall win peace, because this is not only our interest, it is their interest as well. For us, peace with Palestinians is not a matter of political expediency. It is a matter of a moral choice. We, Jewish people, do not want to dominate another people, under no circumstances. We never did it in our history. Why should we do now? I can say also with a smile, it is so difficult to run Jewish politics. Why should we try and run politics of other people? We have our hands full. And then again, we are decided to make peace with Syria and Lebanon. We want to have a comprehensive peace in the Middle East, not to let any wound unhealed, not to let any pain become a policy. Let's make hope our strategy. When I'm thinking about peace with Syria, and some people say that President Assad would like to make peace like nobody else before him, it's okay. If we shall make peace with Syria, it will be in a way the last peace in the Middle East, or namely, the first comprehensive peace in the Middle East. This will be the last conflict. My greatest dream is to see the accomplishment of peace with Syria, having all the 24 members of the Arab League, maybe -3 for the time being, Iraq, Libya, Iran, but even 21 is a respectable number. Let's all of them and us come together and say, let's not waste more money on the arms race. Let's not more take away food from the mouth of our children and invest it in the metals of hatred and hostility. Let's buy a collective ticket to enter the 21st century, which will no longer be the century of hunting, but a century of creation. It is a tremendous hope, a promise to everybody that energy will flow without interruption, that democracy will become an option before having missiles and bombs, that neighborhood will return to the experience of Jews, of Christians, of Muslims. Mr. President, you and the United States are playing and can play a tremendous role. We shall be partners in achieving it. And finally, the conflict in the Middle East is not only political, but also religious. We would like to have religions without knives, without daggers. We would like to see every believer praying to the Lord without any censorship. Every pilgrim visiting holy shrines without interferences. Every difference being respected with an air of tolerance. The greatest thing about the United States, as far as I am concerned, is the tolerance that the fathers of the American constitutions have invested in new veins in our history. Edgar, the agenda is heavy and great. You're equipped to play a role in it. We are committed to do so. We have a president who is willing to lead it. Ladies and gentlemen, it is an evening of thanks and an evening of prayers. Let's not separate between the two. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Edgar M. Bronfman.
It's not easy to talk after listening to Shimon say beautiful things about me. But I'll try. Mr. President, I have the distinct privilege to present you with the Goldman Medal, the highest honor given by the World Jewish Congress, reserved for the very few who have given special service to mankind. Nahum Goldman, my predecessor, for whom the medal was named, was a hero of the Jewish people. Early in his life, he fought for the right of the Jewish people to have their own home, what was then Palestine. He negotiated German reparations with Konrad Adenauer, which resulted in making it possible for survivors of the Holocaust to live dignified lives. And he was a man of wisdom and deep insight. You have added your name to the historic greats, Harry S. Truman, who recognized the new state of Israel, and Jimmy Carter, who put his presidency on the line to facilitate peace between Israel and Egypt. Your commitment to human rights has been demonstrated many times, and you just last week renewed your efforts to fight violence and terrorism wherever it occurs. It is with the greatest respect and admiration that I present the Nahum Goldman Medal to President Bill Clinton. Ladies and gentlemen, I am deeply honored to present to you the President of the United States.
Thank you, Edgar. Foreign Minister Peres, thank you for being here, for your visionary leadership, your wise words. All the friends of Edgar Bronfman who are here from Canada and from around the world, I am profoundly honored to be with you this evening and to receive this wonderful Nahum Goldman Award. I know he was the president of the World Jewish Congress, the World Zionist Organization, the Jewish Agency, Conference of Presidents of major Jewish organizations. Every group I can think of associated with Edgar Bronfman, except the Seagrams group. We would all like to be president of that. I would remind you, Edgar, that I'm a relatively young man without a great deal of job security. We gather, I wish you wouldn't laugh quite so much. We gather tonight to celebrate the accomplishments of an extraordinary man. For all of you, your presence here is testimony to your shared values, your shared goals, and the countless lives that Edgar Bronfman has touched. In these years of great change and opportunity and of great anxiety and even fear, in years of too much cynicism, the Jewish community has found in Edgar Bronfman the rarest of combinations. A leader armed with passion for his people's cause and endowed with the strength to act on that passion. As president of the World Jewish Congress and a citizen of the world, Edgar Bronfman has given life to Emerson's observation that an institution is the lengthened shadow of one man. In the long years when the Soviet Union imprisoned Jews within its borders, many raised their voices in anger, but Edgar journeyed to Moscow to win their release. When millions in Russia and all across Eastern Europe won their freedom from tyranny's grip, many rejoiced, but Edgar took the lead in helping Jewish communities reclaim their proud spiritual and physical heritage that many feared had been lost forever. And as a new era of peace dawns in the Middle East, many celebrate. But Edgar works every day to reconcile the people of Israel and the Palestinians and to breathe new life to ancient lands. Wherever Jews dream of a better life and wherever those dreams are threatened, Edgar Bronfman is sure to be found. A week ago today, Hillary and I went to Oklahoma City to mourn with and pay our respects to the victims and families of the terrible bombing there. Last summer, Edgar undertook a similar journey of his own when he flew to Argentina just hours after hearing of the bombing of the Jewish Community Center in Buenos Aires. There in the midst of the rubble and the ruin, he called on leaders, visited the injured, spoke to the children, told them to stand firm against those who traffic in fear, to hope and not hate, to work every day to turn that hope into reality. In these times, that is a lesson every citizen of every continent should learn and take to heart. It echoes loudest in the ears of those who have known so much terror and so much sorrow. As was said earlier today by my friend Benjamin Mead, we mark the time when, half a century ago, the most terrible chapter in the history of the Jewish people was brought to a close. Unfortunately, 50 years later, merchants of hate still live among us, here at home and around the world. Of course, we cannot compare their actions or their capabilities to the horrors that were visited upon the Jewish people. But they do practice and they do preach violence against those who are of a different color, a different background, or who worship a different God. They do feed on fear and uncertainty. They do promote paranoia. In the name of freedom of speech, they have abandoned the responsibility that democratic freedoms impose on all of us. In this freest of nations, it must strike all of you as ironic that many of these people attack our government and the citizens who work for it, who actually guarantee the freedoms that they abuse. In the name of building a better future, they would relive the most destructive chapters of evil. So while we cannot compare what they are saying and doing to what the Jewish people suffered decades ago, we dare not underestimate the dangers they pose. They can certainly snuff out innocent lives and sow fear in our hearts. They are indifferent to the slaughter of children. They threaten our freedoms and our way of life, and we must stop them. Our early patriot Samuel Adams once said, "If we suffer tamely a lawless attack upon our liberty, we encourage it and involve others in our doom." Here in America, it is not only our right, it is our duty to stop the terror, to bring to justice the guilty, and to stand against the hatred, and to help others in other lands to do the same. Since the beginning of our administration, we have taken broad and swift measures to fight terrorism here and abroad. We have brought to trial the alleged bombers of the World Trade Center who struck at the heart of this city. We have actively pursued those who crossed the line into illegal and violent activity. We have taken strong actions against nations who harbor terrorists or support their bloody trade. We have worked to prevent acts of terror, sometimes with remarkable success. And in a world where open borders and new technologies make our job harder, we have worked closer and closer with other nations to unravel the networks of terror and hunt down those who threaten our people. But the tragedy of Oklahoma City and its aftermath have made it clear that we must take stronger steps. This week I asked Congress to approve my anti-terrorism initiatives, the power to hire 1,000 new federal officials, and law enforcement and support to create a new counterterrorism center under the direction of the FBI, to authorize the military to use its special capabilities in incidents involving chemical, biological, and nuclear weapons of terror in our country. Our proposals would also allow us to tag materials used to make bombs so that suspects could be more easily traced. Although no one can guarantee freedom from terror, at least these common sense steps will help to make our people safer. So tonight I appeal again to Congress to pass these measures without delay. While we take these actions at home, we must also continue and strengthen our fight against terror around the world. Tonight I want to speak to you about terrorism in the Middle East, about rogue nations who sponsor death in order to kill peace, and what we can do further to contain them. From the beginning of my presidency, our policy in the Middle East has run on two tracks: support for the peace process that reconciles Israel and her neighbors. I have been honored to work with Prime Minister Rabin and Foreign Minister Peres and their government and the people of Israel in that regard. And the policy of the United States has been the correct one, that we would never seek to impose a peace on Israel and her neighbors, but if Israel takes risk for peace, we will be there to minimize those risks and maximize the chances of success. And we are ahead of where we were 2 years ago, and by God's grace, we will continue to make progress in the years ahead. I am especially proud of this work that we have all been able to do, and particularly proud of the work of Secretary Christopher in this regard. But the second part of our policy in the Middle East is also important. Opposition to all those who would derail the peace process, promote terrorism, or develop weapons of mass destruction. The dangers remain great. The closer we come to achieving peace and normalcy in the region, the more desperate become the enemies of peace. On buses and along busy streets, terrorist attacks have claimed innocent lives, and we grieve with the families of the victims. We have strengthened our efforts to act against groups like Hamas and Hezbollah, and we are encouraging Chairman Arafat in his efforts to crack down on arrest and prosecute those extremists who resort to violence. But individuals and extremist groups are not the only threat. Israel shares the lands of the Middle East with nations who still seek to destroy the peace. Nations like Iran and Iraq and Libya. They aim to destabilize the region. They harbor terrorists within their borders. They establish and support terrorist base camps in other lands. They hunger for nuclear and other weapons of mass destruction. Every day they put innocent civilians in danger and stir up discord among nations. Our policy toward these rogue states is simple. They must be contained. Iran has presented a particular problem to the peace process and the peoples of the Middle East. From the beginning of our administration, we have moved to counter Iran's support of international terrorism, and in particular its backing for violent opponents of peace in the Middle East. At the same time, we have tried to stop its quest to acquire weapons of mass destruction, which would make it a threat not only to its neighbors, but to the entire region and the world. Our policy has helped to make Iran pay a price for its actions. The nation has effectively been cut off from receiving credit from international financial institutions. The United States and our allies in the G7 have stopped Iranian purchases of weapons from our nations. We have refused to cooperate with Iran on sensitive matters such as nuclear energy and have tightened trade restrictions on items that might be used to build weapons. We have not always been successful, as all of you know. The most recent reports of Russia's agreement to sell gas centrifuge equipment to the Iranians and to train nuclear technicians from Tehran are disturbing to me. Because Iran has more than enough oil to supply its energy needs, we must assume that it seeks this technology in order to develop its capacity to build nuclear weapons. The United States has an overwhelming interest in fighting the spread of these weapons. And Russia, as a neighbor of Iran, has a particular interest in the same goal. If Russia goes forward with the sale of nuclear reactors, it will only undermine that objective. We have strenuously urged the Russians to reverse these decisions. And I will make that case directly to President Yeltsin when I visit Moscow in just a few days. My fellow Americans, I speak especially to you when I say that many people have argued passionately that the best route to change Iranian behavior is by engaging the country. Unfortunately, there is no evidence to support that argument. Indeed, the evidence of the last 2 years suggests exactly the reverse. Iran's appetite for acquiring and developing nuclear weapons and the missiles to deliver them has only grown larger. Even as prospects for the peace of the Middle East have grown, Iran has broadened its role as an inspiration and paymaster to terrorists. And there is nothing to suggest that further engagement will alter that course. That is why last month, after the Conoco Company announced a $1 billion contract to help Iran develop its oil reserves, I was prepared to stop the project by signing an executive order banning any United States firms from financing, supervising, or managing Iranian oil reserves. But Conoco ultimately decided to abandon the deal. And let me add that one of the most effective opponents of that was Edgar Bronfman. He's a major shareholder in Conoco. He would have gained financially from that, but he put the public interest above his self-interest, as he has so often throughout his life. I did not reach my decision in that case lightly. One of the major hallmarks of our administration's foreign policy has been opening new markets abroad and aggressively helping our firms to compete, to create jobs for Americans here at home. But there are times when important economic interests must give way to even more important security interests. And this is one of those times. So tonight, in this great dinner, in honor of this champion of freedom, I am formally announcing my intention to cut off all trade and investment with Iran. And to suspend nearly all other economic activity between our nations. This is not a step I take lightly, but I am convinced that instituting a trade embargo with Iran is the most effective way our nation can help to curb that nation's drive to acquire devastating weapons and its continued support for terrorism. The executive order I plan to sign next week will cover not only the energy sector, but all United States exports to Iran and all investments by American firms and the branches they own or control. We estimate that the embargo will have a limited effect on our companies and our workers, but after reviewing all the options, I have determined that if we are to succeed in getting other nations to make sacrifices in order to change Iran's conduct, we too must be willing to sacrifice and lead the way. In my discussions with President Yeltsin and with the G7 leaders in Halifax in June, I will urge other countries to take similar or parallel actions. I do want you to know that I do oppose the suggestion some have made that we impose a secondary boycott and prohibit foreign firms doing business with Iran from doing business with the United States. I don't agree with that. I think that decision would cause unnecessary strain with our allies at a time when we need our friends' cooperations. My decision to impose this embargo should make clear to Iran and to the whole world the unrelenting determination of the United States to do all we can to arrest the behavior and ambitions of that nation. It would be wrong to do nothing. It would be wrong to do nothing as Iran continues its pursuit of nuclear weapons. It would be wrong to stand pat in the face of overwhelming evidence of Tehran's support for terrorists that would threaten the dawn of peace. Securing a lasting and comprehensive peace must be our urgent priority. The heart of our efforts, of course, is the continuing strong relationship between the United States and Israel. But we must make it work by standing against those who would wreck the peace and destroy the future even if peace is made. Let me say to you tonight, the strategy we have pursued is working. Never before have Arabs and Israelis met so frequently, traveled so freely, understood so well that their common destiny in peace and prosperity is urgent for all. When they are ready to turn a page on the past, the United States will work with them to shape a future of hope. And we will not stop working until the circle of peace is complete. 6 months ago, when I had the great honor to visit Jerusalem, after we signed the peace treaty between Jordan and Israel, I said to the members of the Knesset that the enemies of peace will not succeed because they are the past, not the future. We must work to make that statement true. Foreign Minister Peres said that he felt sorry for me because we had lost our enemy. And we all laughed a little bit uncomfortably because we knew there was a grain of truth in what he said. Oh, we knew so clearly when we had the Soviet Union, the Cold War, and the massive nuclear threat. Today, no Soviet Union, no Cold War, and for the first time since the dawn of the nuclear age, no Russian missiles are pointed at the children of the United States. That is a cause for celebration, and we should be happy about it. I will tell you what I think the threat to the 21st century will be, and you can see its outlines all over the world today. The threat to the 21st century is simply this. These children who are here tonight should grow up in the most exciting, most prosperous, most diverse world in the entire history of humanity. But all the forces that are lifting us up and bringing us together contain a dark underside of possibility for evil. So that the forces of integration that are lifting the world up and bringing the world together carry within them the seeds of disintegration. And the great challenge for the 21st century will be how to seize the opportunities presented by technology, by free movement of people, by the openness of society, by the shrinking of the borders between nations, without being absolutely consumed by the dangers and threats that those same forces present. That is the challenge of the 21st century, because evil has not been uprooted from human nature. And the more open and the more flexible we are, the more vulnerable we are to the forces of organized evil. That is what you saw in Oklahoma City. That is what you saw in the terrible incident with the religious fanatic taking a little vial of poison gas in the subway in Japan. That is what I see when I go to Russia, and what they really want from me now is an FBI office because organized crime is taking over their banks. Or when I went to the Baltics and in Riga, what they really want is some law enforcement help, because now that the totalitarian regime has been stripped away from the Baltics, they are worried that their port will become a conduit for drugs and other instruments of destruction. And that is what you see in the Middle East. Why do the terrorists seek to blow up innocent people in Israel? Because the only way to make the peace work between the Israelis and the Palestinians is to have free movement between the two. And if free movement between the two means that innocent people are killed, then the government of Israel, because the people demand it, must erect barriers. And then when the barriers are erected, the income goes down in the Palestinian, making the peace a failure. The openness makes the peace possible to succeed and provides the threat to its undoing. That is a microcosm of the challenge of the 21st century. If you go home tonight and think about it, nearly every modern problem can be explained in those terms. The forces of progress and opportunity and integration all carry within them the seeds of abuse by organized evil. And we must stand up against it. In Proverbs, the scriptures say that there will someday come a time when the wicked are overthrown and there are no more, but the house of righteousness will stand. Now, in my Baptist upbringing, all the preachers used to tell us that would only happen when the end of human time had come and we were all lifted to the hereafter. No one knows that, but I will say this. Edgar Bronfman has worked to hasten the day when the House of Righteousness will stand, and so must we. This can be a great time for human history, and our children and grandchildren can have a great future because of the lives of people like Edgar Bronfman. But the challenge is clear. Can we make the forces of terror the past? Yes, we can, but we have to work at it. Thank you, and God bless you.